running your life instead of the other way around. Today, we're talking about how to unplug just enough to recharge, find balance, and take back control in a world that's wired 24/7. So stick around. This episode just might change how you live with technology. And welcome back, Paul Malloy.
Thank you. It's great to actually be here with you.
Yeah, and we're shoulder to shoulder,
right?
Instead of country apart.
Right. And it's great actually to be here with you live together. The dynamic duo.
That's right.
You're going to have to figure out which one of us is Batman and which one of us is Robin.
Right. Okay. So, this is a new format. We've got some new microphones, new equipment. So if it doesn't work, blame technology, not me. Okay. So.
Do you know, Randy, one of the things that I thought was actually really fun is that in that intro, you were talking about how we need to unplug in order to recharge. I thought that was pretty clever.
That was an accidental.
Well, there's some deep meaning in there, I think.
Yeah.
And so it's going to be fun to, I think, explore how this works.
Yeah, and so the idea of a digital detox is really coming from kind of being overloaded with technology.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But I've noticed that you're not on Facebook a lot, maybe once a week or so.
Yeah, about that.
And you're not wholly connected into social media like maybe your kids are.
Absolutely. Yeah. I haven't done all of the other social media mechanisms. In part, that's a choice. It's not just because I don't know how to do it. That's not the issue at all. It's the fact that, do I need it? And in that kind of retrospect, it's like one where I am connecting with the majority of people that I know and love. That's good enough.
Yeah, and I think that should be, or that was the original point of some of the social media, is
right,
connecting with people you love. In fact, I joined Facebook in 2007.
Early adopter, always the tech early adopter.
I think Facebook had been public for maybe a year at that point, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it was because I said to my daughter, our first grandson was born, and I said, I want to see pictures. You know, she lived a city away. Of course, it wasn't that far, right? But I said, I want to see pictures of our grandson. They're on Facebook.
And you know what's funny is that I didn't join Facebook until 2022. And it was the entire time that I was teaching, students would come up and say, Mr. Malloy, are you on Facebook? And I would say no. And I had no desire for that to happen, because that would have been considered some conflict of interest. You know, there's some potential pitfalls there. But once I left the classroom, then I absolutely wanted to see what my students were doing and how well they were doing. And now I'm connected to hundreds of them through Facebook, which I think is the appropriate way to use that technology.
Right. So today we're going to talk a little bit about how digital media affects us, how it might overwhelm us at times, may even change our mental health.
Mm-hmm.
But we don't want to demonize technology
or
social media. There are certainly good things about this technology.
Absolutely. And you have to remember that it's us who are in control. It's our decisions. We get to decide how much or how little that we want to leverage technology.
Yeah. And I think that if we learn and we get a good education of what that entails, of how to use it properly, it's going to be a lot more valuable to us.
Yeah, absolutely.
So there's some growing evidence, and in fact, I looked up this Surgeon General's report that showed a excessive or poorly managed use of digital technology, especially social media, can seriously affect mental health, particularly for youth, but also for adults.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's important to understand that this new Surgeon General announcement stands on the shoulders of a lot of research over the last decade.
Mm,
And in fact, it is something that I definitely was aware of as a teacher and actually tried to teach and share with my students how to balance, properly balance and leverage technology in their lives. Some believed me, some didn't.
yeah.
But the reality is that there is unquestionably an impact.
Hmm.
And that's part of what we want to be able to explore this evening.
Yeah. Yeah. So one thing, well, there's several things that the report highlights, but there's increased rates of anxiety,
Mm-hmm.
depression,
Mm-hmm.
sleep problems,
Absolutely.
even suicidal thoughts,
Sadly.
and linked to heavy social. It's all these linked to heavy social media use. It's not just casual scrolling, like maybe that you're familiar with, but it's about constant exposure to online pressures. And some of the image pressures to look your best, to have the best body, the best muscles, the best makeup, the best beard. Cyberbullying.
Which is absolutely such an enormous reality and has
Hmm.
touched my life
Wow.
in multiple families that I'm connected to, and so it's a Pandora's box in a way. And again, keep in mind that it's not the fault of the technology; it is how it is
Hmm.
being used or how it's being leveraged.
Right. I think that in any situation, a social comparison, like when I was in high school, we didn't have the internet, but we had social comparison. We had, this group against this group. We had the nerds against the
Jocks,
jocks,
yep.
right?
And you probably know which side we were in.
Yeah. I tried to make the entry into the jock side by playing
Yep.
soccer, but
Yep.
they didn't think soccer
With me, it was
a
track
real
and
sport,
field.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I know.
So exactly. So technology isn't inherently bad. It's how
Yeah,
it's used.
right.
The amount of time spent, whether it fits the individual's age, emotional maturity. For example, small kids probably shouldn't have access to social media or even
There's no need.
electronic.
There really is no need.
I mean, Facebook used to be restricted to 13 years old, and I think that was a good thing. Now with parental access, you can get younger kids, but I think that's wise to keep that away. And so it's only older and teens and adults that might be able to even know how to use it and balance it properly.
Yeah, that absolutely makes sense. And I think that's something that is important, that, there may be an initial backlash from some of our listeners saying, hey, look, you're off base here. If you actually slow down and think about it reasonably and logically, then I think that the weight of the importance of these studies becomes more obvious.
Yeah, yeah. So another thing that the report encourages parents and educators and individuals to help create healthy habits,
Mhm.
set limits, promote meaningful offline activities. It's about balance of technology. Technology is a tool, and like any tool, it can help or hurt depending on how it's handled.
Yeah, absolutely. And certainly one of the things that we want to help as we talk about living centered lives, right, is that, again, all things in balance, right? And what we're trying to avoid is, in essence, creating sort of a mental traffic jam,
Hmm.
right? We want to clear clarify, maybe is one way to put it, clarify the brain, so that it's not feeling like it's overloaded. And it's so easy to get overloaded in our society. And you were mentioning about my social media minimalist approach, but it's that way actually when I don't watch a lot of broadcast TV. I don't even have it.
Yeah.
Yes, we do some streaming services, but
Right.
even then, it's like my wife and I might watch a movie or a TV show once a week,
Yeah. Wow.
on average. But a lot of that is because, again, there is an impact psychologically. It can be heartwarming and uplifting. It can be, it can get your heart and your mind racing, and then it makes it hard to go to sleep. I will tell you that my wife would she would say this after every time that I went to go watch Top Gun while I was in pilot training, that she knew that I would drive more aggressively.
Right. Yeah.
Absolutely. And so at some point she would say, no, we're not going to go watch Top Gun for the 20th time.
Right.
But those exciting movies. I just watched Mission Impossible 7 the other night.
Yeah.
And it's a good thing I watched it at home, because otherwise I would have been seriously, driving that aggressive way.
Yeah, that's funny. That's funny. One thing that I think that I have a problem with is all the notifications that come on the phone.
Mm-hmm.
I have WhatsApp, I have Facebook, I have a YouTube channel, I have Instagram, I have.
Do we need some kind of rescue and intervention here?
Maybe so. I have turned off notifications for Instagram and Facebook. I'm on there when I want to be on there.
Mm-hmm. That's good. That's a good step.
The only thing now that I have notifications on is WhatsApp.
Okay.
WhatsApp is where we have our family chat group.
Got it.
And I have a nonprofit that I work with, and some individuals overseas that I chat with on a business projects that we use WhatsApp.
Mm-hmm.
And that's okay. There are some larger groups that I'm part of on WhatsApp that I've totally muted them.
Okay.
So I go in and I can look at and say, oh, I've got 18 notifications. And I can read that when I have time, not immediately when I get a particular notification.
Right. And that's good. That really is. Now, for me, it's yes, I have notifications turned on for text messages. But again, because that's largely my children, grandchildren, well, less grandchildren, but children, my siblings,
Sure.
And so sometimes we're actually in a discussion, a conversation, which can be done somewhat through text messaging.
Yeah.
And we kind of enjoy that, especially when we're having fun. We poke fun, and some of my siblings can be pretty clever in their text messaging. But the point is that often at night in particular, I will mute my entire phone and place it on the counter as it's recharging face down. And that is so that the light of a received message doesn't interrupt my sleep, and the sound doesn't interrupt my sleep. This is something that we've discovered, particularly with young people, is that if they have a phone and those notifications are left on, it dings, chimes, buzzes, rings, plays music, whatever it is, through the night, and it absolutely damages the value of their sleep. And in some cases, they feel compelled to respond as soon as they hear that incoming message. And which means that their brains are not ever relaxing. They're not getting quality sleep. And again, everybody's a little bit different, but in general, for a youth, 8 hours of sleep at night, at least until they're in their mid-teens, is critical.
Yeah.
The difference of coming to school with a brain that is ready to engage as opposed to a brain that is struggling to stay alert is enormous.
Yeah, and I feel that, and I've learned some tricks about my phone that I can turn it to do not disturb mode automatically.
Yeah.
So I set mine at from 10:30 p.m. to 6 a.m.
Excellent.
is totally silent, except there's an exception list where you can have starred or priority contacts that will ring through, but only if they call. So all of my kids are on that list.
Right.
My grandkids that have
because if there was an emergency, you would want to be contacted.
Right.
Yeah.
And some key people our parents, our two parents that are living, and some of our siblings that are
Mhm.
around, we have
Mhm.
those on that list that can ring through.
Right.
So that
Right.
helps control me. And so when I set my phone down, and I do the same thing, I set it upside down on the nightstand while it's charging, and it's quiet
Yeah.
for at least that 7 hour period.
And that's a great way to start. But let's talk a little bit more about this concept of digital detox. I mean, given your connected lifestyle, um, you've done some things, and you're recommending, obviously, that this is something that should at least be considered for everyone,
Hmm.
especially for youth. And when I say youth, 18 and down is what I'm talking about. Now,
Hmm.
yes, the older teenagers may want to feel like they're in charge of their lives, but if they are taught and if they are given the choice to act responsibly, some will, some won't. But it is something that needs to be asserted, not just taken for granted.
Yeah. Well, and there was a time, I think, and I guess there's several times in my life where I've had uh, a new job, or a job gets really critical at a certain point, and I'm getting a lot of notifications.
Hmm.
The stress level goes up. And if I try to use social media as a relief, it just adds to the
Right.
stress.
Absolutely right.
So I think it's really important to find a balance, a time that you can go outside of the house,
Yes.
away from
Yes.
technology. I love the fact that some of my kids take their kids camping,
Hmm.
and or just the outdoors, to play baseball, to go on a hike, to play in an orchestra or a band.
Hmm.
Those
Hmm.
type of things are just mental health helpers.
Right, right. And in addition to that, there are times and places when a cell phone should be put on airplane mode or at least silenced, like when you go to a play, when you go to a movie,
Right.
and it's always annoying.
Please turn them off in the movies.
And they now have to ask that because before, phones would go off in the middle of the movie. And if it was a good intense part, and the phone chimes, like kind of ruins the moment, right?
Yep.
In church is another good example.
Oh, yeah.
Now, granted, sometimes we forget. I have forgotten
Yes.
and received a call in the middle of, church, and it's like, oh gosh. Okay. Ann and I actually now cross-check each other as we're getting ready to go in. Did you silence your phone?
Yeah.
Got it. And sometimes even then, once in a while, it falls through the cracks.
Well, yeah, and I find my kids or even my mother start texting me right in the middle of church.
If they know that you're online, then
Yeah,
it's kind of
that's
like you're sort of
unfortunate.
fair game. Do you know what, Randy? Ann and I went not long ago. We went out to dinner, which we do Friday date nights every week.
Good.
And we were at this wonderful Mexican restaurant in Fond du Lac, which is in a city in central Wisconsin. Great restaurant, great food, great service. They playing Mexican music over the radio. Next to us was a fairly large family, and by large family, I think they had 12-ish chairs around double tables.
Hmm.
And at one point, both before the food was served and then after they had kind of finished, every single person, youth and adults, were on their phones
Oh.
and busy with their thumbs, but completely tuning out each other. As well as, of course, it's like, yeah, we ate food, big deal. I mean, that's how it came across. And I'm not saying that's exactly what they were thinking, but that's how it certainly appeared, because they were completely wrapped up in their digital universe.
Yeah. Yeah. And I appreciate the fact that some families don't do that. They go to
Hmm.
a restaurant, the
Yep.
phones are in the pockets or in the
Yep.
purses. They're away so they can interact. They can look across the table and say, "Hey, how you doing? I heard you had a car breakdown, or
Hmm.
how's that son and his trombone, and things like that."
Yeah. Where you engage in more meaningful, not just trivial, although even trivial conversation is actually valuable. But as you start there and then you get more involved in that discussion, and you start to learn more about what the person is going through, what they're feeling, what they're dealing with, right? And it doesn't mean that every conversation is going to be some sort of soul-searching, eye-opening conversation. But I think in that case, the point is that if it was needed, it would come out and you could each talk to it, right? As opposed to thinking, oh, he's on his phone. I really need to ask Randy a question, but I don't want to disturb him.
Yeah.
No,
And that's part of being present.
exactly.
Or be present with the people that you're present with.
Exactly.
Instead of the people that are at a distance.
And then, like you said, making that a choice and making it an obvious choice, and say, hey, when we're at dinner, even at dinner around your own table, and how our society is doing that less and less, sadly enough. But certainly, again, I know that as my children and grandchildren now get together, we try to make that an obvious choice. That, there are no cell phones that need to be used or pulled out at this point. We're here together as family, and we're here to spend time together and to converse, share our love, our concerns, and all of those good things. But even beyond that, there are times and places, as you alluded to earlier, where it makes sense to get away from the digital environment.
Right. There's some studies that have been done about I don't know if you've heard about it. It's called the Earth's heartbeat.
I haven't. I'm not familiar with this.
It's between, so the human ear can hear down to about 20 hertz.
Okay.
That's pretty low, right?
Okay.
And to about 20,000 hertz is the highest.
Okay.
So in that particular range, at 10 hertz, you can feel it. Okay. It's like, think of a drum.
Okay.
That's too far away to hear the boom, boom, but you can feel the repercussions.
Interesting.
So that's what 10 hertz. Well, between 7 and 10, they call that the heartbeat of Earth. You take all of the lightning storms, you take all of the tectonic shifts, earthquakes and waves and everything, and all of that resonates at about 10 times a second. Just kind of this little and the only time that your body can feel that is when it's totally isolated away from the other noise, other radios, including a smartphone or a computer that has different waves. If you're up in the mountains and you're sitting by a lake on a stream, that's the perfect time that you can feel that Earth heartbeat. And it's even a mental health system that is akin to a baby hearing his own mother's heartbeat.
Oh, wow. How interesting.
So that's the kind of the science behind it. And of course, everybody's going to vary. It's not going to be something that works right with everybody. You're going to make a note about this Earth's heartbeat.
Well, actually, what I was kind of wondering is, what about when, and I know that especially for babies, that a lot of parents will turn on like running water, right? Or falling rain as an ambient sound, right? And sometimes I have been so stressed that I have actually turned on something often in YouTube, to be able to find something that creates a calming, natural sound. And yet I'm using technology to do that.
Yeah.
Any thoughts?
Okay. So that's kind of an artificial way. Yes, I think it can work, and it can help to have that kind of a music system that portrays that. And it's okay. It's better than nothing, but the real heartbeat of the Earth. And there's a scientist called Schumann.
Okay.
that did a lot of studies about it. In fact, you could Google Schumann resonance,
Mm.
and you'll see a lot of research on this 7 to 10 hertz sound waves. And there's a lot of music or sounds on YouTube that you can access that will have that kind of a music beat behind it. Now you can't hear it. It's not within your hearing range, but with music you can have a what do you call it? An aftertone or a subtone
Or an overtone.
Overtone.
Yep. Yep.
The barbershop quartet sound. Right? Get
Yes.
those overtones.
Exactly. And obviously it can be done instrumentally as well.
Right.
Yeah.
So that you get the reverb between notes that equals that 7 to 10 hertz.
That is so interesting.
So
Randy, tell me if you've ever talked with your wife, Danny, about trying to, again, maybe not 100% detox, but at least reduce that feeling that you need to be plugged in. Have you ever said, hey, help me with this?
Yes, we have. And it kind of, excuse me, kind of ebbs and flows a little bit. Sometimes we'll identify, I've been spending a lot of time on social media. So my wife, Danny, has completely removed Facebook and Instagram off her phone. To her, she still has the accounts, and sometimes she'll log in on her computer, but I don't think she's logged in a couple of months now. I've had children that have completely abandoned Facebook.
As some of mine have as well.
I think abandoning Facebook was an easier thing because some of the younger generation are going to X, Twitter,
right,
Instagram, some of those.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, even the content of Instagram and Facebook Reels can get raunchy.
Yes.
And it's not enough that you're shocked, and it's kind of funny, and so it kind of pulls you in and gets you, and all of a sudden you realize, I'm listening to some really trashy stuff. And then it's kind of, you need to wake up call and say, okay, hon, I need to break out of this.
Yeah. And again, going back to some of our children and grandchildren, we need to be careful because for them, it's really easy to get sucked into things that are funny, but meaningless. And they can end up spending hours of literally wasted time without realizing it.
Yeah.
And in particular with one of my grandsons, this is a major issue right now. And he wants to have something in his hand, something electronic in his hands, almost as it were, figuratively 24/7. The reality though is that if we can get him to set the electronic devices down and put a screwdriver in his hand, or something else that he is now going to build something with, then he completely engages in that. And it is actually far in the brain, the far more neurons will fire when we're involving our hands, our eyes, our ears. Hopefully we're not licking Legos, but but hopefully the point is that we are all in essence, when we're building something, or even if we're tearing something apart to repair, right?
Yeah.
And what we found with this particular grandson is that he is absolutely adept at being able to both disassemble and assemble things, and he enjoys it. The trick is to kind of get him to make that shift from the digital world to a tactile world. But it is so much more physically, mentally, psychologically engrossing than a digital world.
Yeah, because it activates your right brain, your creative side, and when both sides of your brains are firing, that helps your mental health.
Exactly. So what happens, Randy, if you get overwhelmed and you kind of get this feeling, and we talked about, our wives helping us out, But are there other ways or other resources that can help us to complete a digital detox?
So there are apps that you can put on your phone.
Okay.
One thing I mentioned earlier is that in Android and Apple, they have parental controls that are built into it.
Mm-hmm.
So I would suggest that anybody that has a phone, a teenager that has a phone, you have some parental app control over it.
Yes.
And for a simple reason that under the age of 18, you are responsible for them legally and
Mm-hmm.
I guess properly,
Right.
morally, you are responsible for them. And to have that app control is going to help you to help them shape their lives into something that's more meaningful than just indulged in electronics.
Right. Right. So there are some, of course, who feel like they can't unplug.
Yeah.
That they, and it's because of work, or maybe it's fear of missing out. FOMO. Right.
FOMO.
Yeah. I mean, is that a real thing?
It is. It is a psychological addiction to get into a technology so much that you feel that need. Now, about 15 years ago,
Okay.
10, 15 years ago, I was in a job that I had to be available 24/7. And it
Wow.
was a very difficult situation where I had to be able to listen to and answer my phone for anything, any particular need. We had a data center that I was in charge of, and if there was even one little hiccup with any of those computers, I had to be able to answer it, troubleshoot it, or run down.
Wow. That sounds stressful.
It was, and that's one reason I'm no longer doing that. But
Okay.
but I have at this point in my life, I have actually chosen to go to careers that don't have that kind of demand.
Mm. Mm.
I could be an IT manager. I could be a data center manager, but I feel like that's too stressful for me and my mental state right now at this point in my
Okay.
life.
Okay. All right. And what about people that think that without their digital tools, and I say tools, not just entertainment, that that they are less effective, and perhaps, especially for youth, they would be bored. Now, I don't know about
Yeah.
you, but when my kids came up and said, "Dad, I'm bored," I'd say, "Oh, good, be bored," because even that's a choice. You don't have to tell them everything to do to not be
Right.
bored. Most parents do that, though.
I know, and I'm guilty of the same thing. Dad, I'm bored. Well, read a book.
I wonder
Go
what would happen
outside.
if we went to our grandkids and said, "Hey, we're super bored."
Yeah.
They would probably put a game console in our hands.
That's right.
Here, play this game with me, which has its value and its place.
Well, I had my 6-year-old granddaughter over the other day, and her 4-year-old little brother,
Okay.
and they wanted to play Twister.
Okay.
Can you imagine
the game?
The game Twister.
The floor game.
The floor game Twister.
With the spin the dial and the dots.
Yeah. They wanted me to play it with them. And I get it out, and I'm going, I'll tell you what, I'll spin the dial. And you guys, it was hilarious. We had
especially when he started to look like a pretzel.
Yeah. I don't bend over. So I didn't do the play on the dots or whatever. I just spun the dial for him, and we had a lot of fun. But it wasn't an electronic game.
Yeah.
And after, I don't know, 3 or 4 hours of tending them, I guess, we turned on a movie because it was rest time, and the 2 of the kids fell asleep, and
Randy fell asleep
and
too.
Just about.
Can I bring up? I love that. I love
Yeah.
that you were willing and able to engage with your grandchildren in something that was absolutely physical.
Yeah.
And parents, grandparents, if you get opportunities to not just do that, but go on walks, go in the backyard and look at clouds, look at birds, look at moths and butterflies or whatever.
Yeah.
But if you also get those opportunities to read to your children, your grandchildren, those have incredibly powerful consequences, as in good things that will happen. And
Hmm.
again, keep in mind that means that we're not it's a tactile version of what could very easily be replicated electronically. But to have a book in the hand with the pictures and the words and your voice reading those words has incredible power.
Right. And so I, I'm thinking that we've got a thread, a common theme that's going through all this, and it's centered life.
Yeah, absolutely.
We're balancing our technology
Hmm. Hmm.
and introducing again, maybe some physical activities, some outdoor activities, some things that will help us in a mental health state. There
Right.
are already just dozens of ways that we can be stressed.
Right.
And technology can be a relief
Hmm.
or add
Hmm.
to it
Hmm.
if you use it in the right way. Um, so I think we need to make everybody a challenge to say, okay,
This is your call to action.
this is your call to action for this week. Do one thing to detox a little bit. Now, I'm not talking about just deleting Facebook or Instagram off your phone, but maybe a meal. You're going to a restaurant, for example.
Right.
Everybody agree to put their phones away, turn them off, or silence them at least,
Hmm.
so that you can
Hmm.
have some real human conversations, especially at home. If you're sitting down to a meal with your family, your
Hmm.
spouse,
Hmm.
set that device on the counter away from you and keep it in your pocket and have some conversations.
Right.
Those are the valuable things that help our mental health.
Hmm.
Um, you could turn off notifications for a day or an hour, or
Hmm.
agree just to
Hmm.
not have any
Hmm.
screen time for kids.
Or again, weather permitting, go outside for a walk or just sit in a chair on a porch, and
Hmm.
allow that time to recharge you. And again, it's that really interesting dichotomy between unplug to recharge.
Right. And that recharge might be going to the mountains and feeling the
Yes, yes.
heartbeat of the
Whether
earth.
it's a short span of time, which does have an effect, or whether it's a longer period of time where you can feel comfortable and confident, and that may take some practice to unplug.
There we go.
Yeah. Well, thank you for being with us this evening for where we
It's
are.
glad to have you back and
Thank you.
shoulder to shoulder,
Yeah, this is
literally.
awesome. We may have to do this a little bit more
I
often.
know, right? Let's do it next week.
Okay,
All
I think
right.
that sounds like a good plan. Thanks for joining us. Be sure to subscribe, like, follow, catch us now on your favorite podcast app, and we'll see you next time on Centered Live.
Thanks. See you later.